Welcome to Adventures in Consciousness, the interactive show that offers expansive conversation with pioneering new thought teachers and personal real-time guided journeys into the imaginal realm to access your soul's wisdom and discover how to live your greater story. Here is your host, human potentialist, soul mentor, and consciousness guide, Jennifer Evanko.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation. Today, my guest is teacher, guide, divination expert, love coach, and practical dreamer, Shama Viola. Since the early 70s, Shama has been immersed in the wonder and creativity and complexity of a spiritual journey. She has routinely traveled around the world, studied with masters, developed her esoteric skills, and lived in various countries and cultures, eventually becoming a citizen of the Federation of Damanhur, which we'll learn more about soon. That's in Italy. She's been there for the past 20 years. I actually met Shama as a teacher in the mystery schools at Damanhur and have been on this journey, this amazing journey with her ever since. Shama enjoys no greater pleasure than sharing what she's lived and learned and finds a great reward in seeing her students bloom. So welcome, Shama Viola.
Thank you. Glad to be here with you.
Thank you. So, Shama, in your bio and in my reading about your life, you have had this lifelong passion for spiritual growth and consciousness. I'd like to start back at the beginning. Let's start where this passion came from and how you started.
Well, the passion itself actually started in the early 70s. Although spirituality has always been in my life, but in my early age, I was raised in an orphanage with nuns, and at the time, spirituality really was religion. And although I tried very hard to be a good person, a good soul, a good girl, and follow those dogmas and those dictates, it was difficult. Of course, being in an orphanage, and I stayed there for 13 years, from 4 to 17 years old, I had to follow the rules, I had to follow what was offered, and it was only that Catholic upbringing that was possible. And I attempted to really enter it with as much passion and innocence and dedication as possible. But it was difficult. And by the time I was 14, I knew it wasn't for me. And it was difficult to stay there and participate in that which was my duty to do, all the various mass and rosaries, etc., when I couldn't feel a thing, having tried so hard and got no reward from it. So I stayed until I was able to leave. And from then on, I felt the greatest gift in my life was freedom. And so I used my freedom to explore everywhere, everything that possibly I could. In the beginning, I wasn't so much involved in seeking for spirituality. They said I was burnt out enough to look to explore the world, seeing that I didn't know a thing about it. And that's what I did. I spent a number of years really delving into the world, what was it, what it had to offer to me, and all of that, until I chose to come to America when I was 24. And it was there that things developed for me in terms of my spiritual growth.
It's interesting because I would think that childhood would have put you said spirituality was kind of closed down for you because it kind of put you in a box of this is what religion is.
Yeah.
There must have been something that sparked and opened you after.
It was the freedom, the fact that I could choose, which was not something I could do as a child in that context. And the fact that I realized there was much more than just the Catholic religion. And so the interest of exploring the variety of approaches to religion and spirituality appealed to me. Not so much religion, I didn't explore much about that, but I felt the the need to explore my spirit and the spirit of those around me in the freest way possible. Of course, I became a flower child and lived it to the fullest. And that was really my spirituality, to dream with a lot of other people of love, of the end of war, of loving one another, and to be free to express oneself freely. There was such a powerful dream beyond that hippie culture. And it was beautiful, although, of course, it had also its dark side. And I experienced that too. I saw what was happening to those who became self-indulgent and didn't pursue the gift that that freedom could give them, but stayed in that self-gratification that was possible to have.
Yeah, so, I mean, experiencing that quick freedom, it would be easy to get into that self-indulgence and that, but there must have been something, there is that dark side. I'm sure there's a lot of times that you struggled, but at some point you had a trusting and went in a certain direction. Is there?
Yes.
You had guidance, or?
It was really, I was an observant, and I could see people very, very close to me being lost. All this excitement and all this freedom and all this wonder and magic that we were seeking, it was becoming distorted into a drug culture that was hurting so many. And as I say, very close to me. And I started putting the brakes and recognizing that was not at all the path I was going to be interested in. And life as a way to meet you when you are in integrity with yourself and you are not choosing to go with the flow, but you're choosing to go with that which speaks to you. And so it began easily. I don't know if people of this day and age know what EST was, seminar training. But that was my very first course in human potential that opened up a reality that there was possibilities for me to explore myself, and that there was people out there that wanted to explore themselves differently than we had done up until that time, with the few resources that there was, which was mainly drugs and a good, very good heart and good intention.
I don't know if you know, that's where I met my husband, was an EST. I don't know if you knew that story. But one of the things that I'm struck with EST, which maybe that was a pivotal time in your life too, is it really did teach you to yourself, to make yourself as the center instead of outside.
Yes. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I felt it was fantastic. And I didn't pursue very much of it because it's interesting to see the shadow side of everything. EST had the other side as well. It was this type of control and go for it in a way that was just, wait a minute, no, please. No, don't try to push me into that. No, I had to actually put on the brakes and learn to put on the brakes. And it wasn't the only thing I had to learn to say, no, it's not for me. It was for me, the content was wonderful. The modality was not at all. It reminded me too much of structure, of things from the past that I didn't need. I still love my freedom most of all because it gives me great creativity and a great way to express myself. And so that desire to maintain that freedom has saved me from many things, which I also, after EST, I fell into, for 6 months, into this very interesting group of people that were very much with the Ascended Master. But the modality, again, was so structured, so limiting, so define so another box. And I had to learn to say no. And that was even harder than est, which was hard enough, where people will just pursue me to continue on. And was so I had to take the opportunity to learn to put the brakes on and say no to that which was not for me. It was not speaking to me, even though I could appreciate some of the content. And it's wonderful because there is some truth in everything, but there is also distortions in everything, and one has to discriminate.
Well, it's, I think, a great perspective to see both, because then you start realizing the truth is inside of you to discern between what's right for you and what's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, beautiful. So some of your teachers, then you had this period of your life where you traveled and met with different teachers. Can you talk about that a little?
Well, at the time, I was living in Berkeley, California, and I didn't travel at the time. I moved around a lot. I was with my ex-husband 18 years, and we moved 14 times. So I was traveling, but in the Bay Area most of the time. I met my greatest teacher while I was there after this other experience. I began to volunteer for a group of homes for schizophrenic adolescents. And I volunteered for 6 months with them. And then they asked me to be the director of one of their houses. And I became the director of one of their houses. So I lived with some schizophrenic adolescents, my husband, my daughter, which was 5 at the time, and a couple of psychology students who were my help and staff and support. And so I was able to hear of different things that were happening that were interesting. And I signed up to be part of a course. It was a 6-month course on enhancing psychic powers, the Psychic Institute. And that was my beginning exploration of even channeling. It was my first experience with channeling. And there was a channel there that was called The Teacher. And I remember that when I went to do this one session with him, he said to me, "Do I have your permission to start, how would you call it, taking down the big shield, the ice shield that you have around you?" I remember being shocked because, I was pretty numb throughout my whole childhood in the orphanage. And he began to actually break down this particular structure. But in any case, by being in that environment, I learned of a channel being called Casca Fayette, who was doing every Sunday in Marin County a session with people. And I felt drawn to go, and I went. And I fell in love. I fell in love with this amazing light warrior that he was. He was such a sword. He was cutting through any BS possible. That he was seeing through everyone and everything, and he was just going to the core. And it was just magnificent, but scared me to death. Every time my husband and I will go from Berkeley to Marin County, we had to go through the bridge, and we would be silent going there because we saw so many people fall apart, being thrown out, divorce. It was just like, oh my God, it was just scary to go, but it was the most amazing thing that I had ever experienced, ever. And I loved him, and I loved what he did. I loved what he taught. Basically, his teaching was, you guys are suffering in an attempt to say, I love you for other people. You are suffering for other people in a distorted, unworkable attempt to say, I love you. And drove this down into us very deeply to make us understand. We were saying yes when it was no. We were trying to be nice and polite when we were just, covering up something that was a reality inside of us we didn't want to say. He will totally break through any covert hostility, especially in women. It was seeing that to the core. Anyway, it was a 2 years with him that was, it was the most vital, scary, magnificent experience ever for me. And then he said, goodbye. I did what I came to do. Now the ball is in your court. Go play.
Wow. As I'm listening to you, I'm interested in how Est was about breaking down some of those barriers, about getting to that source. And now you're saying he was about getting to the authentic self as well. It's like,
yes, but he was seen through, and he did it with so much love, but he was ruthless. He was, talk about hard love. It was that. And you could trust him totally and completely. So it wasn't through techniques or it was through just tearing the veils to make us see how we were sacrificing ourselves in an attempt to love others and to be loved. His modality was drastic, but totally worked for me, and it was what I needed. And the love was involved in it.
And that's, yes, I guess that would be the safety, the trust would be in that feeling, that sense of love.
Yes.
So the journey then for you had that desire for the freedom, but also it seems like it was going about finding the truth of who you are, the reality, and standing in that truth.
At that time, it became paramount. It was that time. He was the one who made me understand life was worth living if I was myself, if I loved myself, if I loved others in a proper way. That there were distorted ways to love, and that we had to learn to love in the right way. But he was the one who drove that message into me and made me realize I want to live a life that is worth living, and that is worth by loving others and loving myself, which I wasn't really doing. I wasn't loving myself. I was hiding. I was frightened. I was still having such conditioning from my upbringing. I always felt myself like a little mouse. I wanted to be a wallflower, absolutely. I had learned in orphanage to be invisible for my safety and my survival. And so I was still that kind of person, living in fear that I could be hurt, that I could be thrown out, that I could be abandoned. Because abandonment was a major issue with having been abandoned. So I was still in that area. And Cascafayette knew that, felt that, and felt my true desire to grow, and never confronted me in a way that I couldn't handle. So that the respect was there for where I was. So he would teach for us, but me, through what was happening out there. I was more of an observer. I was more learning to observing what was happening, what he was doing, more than he was going into me, because he felt where I was and what I needed wasn't that.
Beautiful. So at some point in your learning, I mean, you're still learning about yourself there. At some point you started learning what your passion was to teach and to be. Did you have a turning point?
No, not there. In fact, let me tell you the next piece.
Please.
So, after Cascafayette leaves, after 2 years, saying, okay, guys, I did what I came to do. Now the ball is in your court. I was so in shock without him that I didn't want to have any other teacher. I was like loyal. I didn't want to have another teacher. And although most of my Cascade friends went into Lazarus right away, I resisted, loyal to Cascade until I gave up. After a couple of years, I said, okay, I'm going because I think we're alone. And I went to Lazarus. I was with Lazarus for 8 years. At the time, luckily, thank God for that, Lazarus was doing private readings. And I went for a private reading with him. In his private readings, he was giving us our focuses for this life, our why we had come. And that's an amazing gift, truly an amazing gift. He says that there are two universal focuses that each human being has. And everybody has those. And then each one of us has 5 personal focuses. So in this session, he would give people and gave me my 5 personal focuses, along with my 4 blockages that were hindering me from pursuing those focuses. And so he told me that my first focus in life was love. To learn everything I could about love, to delve deep into love as like a scientist would do with a little germ on a microscope. That was going to be my focus in life. And that felt good. And then he said, your second focus is communication. In that moment, when I heard that word, I burst into tears. I started sobbing, and I didn't know why. Because communication for me was, I didn't know what he was talking about. But although I didn't know what he was talking about, my body just emoted tremendously and deeply. It was that impactful when he talked about communication. But only later, after I left him, did I understand what he meant. That I was meant to communicate, that I was meant to use this, that was a focus of mine. But it didn't become a focus of mine until later, after I received and learned and digested the wonderful gifts of information and knowledge that I was so lucky to receive. So communication came later on.
Wow. So, hold on a second. So you talk about the blocks. Did he give you any clear understanding of these blocks?
Very clear understanding of the blocks. And of course, at the time, the beautiful thing about when you are asleep is that you receive gems from those who are able to give it to you. And you are not seeing very much. You're just like, you have to start polishing those gems because you don't see them. You are not, you're blind, you're deaf, you're dumb. And that's where I was. So he told me those things and I could hear it. And I could hear it. But it took me those 8 years with him to hone and understand more deeply the ramification of the blockages as he was sharing how many of these blockages were, part of what our ego. It was not just mine, So I learned. It took me a long time to actually own these blockages and start understanding the detrimental effects they had on me, and that I could do something about it. But I had to kind of bang my head against the wall a few times in order to realize, yes, I am really I have this kind of tendency and it's not working. So what can I do about it? So it was, it took time. It took time.
Beautiful. So we're listening to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation. I'm Jennifer Evanko, and my guest is Shama Viola. Stay with us, please. We're going to come back in a few minutes after this break and continue the conversation. Thank you. We'll see you in a minute.
The Real Conscious Connection. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
There is no greater mystery in life than you. So why not take a fully experiential plunge into the depths of your being to uncover and retrieve all the secrets and wisdom your soul is crying out for you to know? If you enjoy Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation, you'll love Adventures in Consciousness, the course. Join Jennifer in this unique 13-week series of journeys specifically designed to unlock the mysteries of yourself. Each week, you'll journey progressively deeper into the meta realm, where, freed from the limitations of your mind, you'll get to play and explore the inner and outer reaches of your awareness. The next series of Adventures in Consciousness, the course, is starting soon. Find out more and stake your place at jenniferevanko.com.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly.
Lights out. Good night.
And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back to Adventures in Consciousness, the conversation. My guest is Shama Viola, and we're going to continue talking about, we just finished talking about her years in the States and these, as a flower child, and these adventures she had learning and with different teachers. But now I'd like to move into where she's been in the last 20 years, into this very special place. Can you tell us a little bit about your adventure to Damanhur and how that happened?
Let's say that it wasn't planned. It wasn't at all my dream or desire to end up in community again. So things happened. Well, I had a marvelous time, from 86 to 91, working with Shakti Gawain, traveling the world with her, with Helen Silverstone, doing voice dialogue. We did wonderful work together. And it was all in a certain way to marry spirituality with psychology, learning the work on the personalities. It was so deep and so profound what I was doing with them and with Shakti, that at some point, about 1991, I had the deep desire to come to Italy and give this work to the Italian people. I felt that Italy was a bit behind in consciousness and could use this amazing tool of voice dialogue.
And that's again where you started from, was Italy. You started there.
Right. And so I felt that I could go and teach their voice dialogue. Because having been with Shakti, Nal, and Sidra all these many years, I was now used to doing retreats, doing sessions, so I had become much more skilled in interactions with other people. And this deep desire to bring voice dialogue to Italy made me say goodbye to my dear, dear friend Shakti. I left the USA to come to Italy. I had not been here for 33 years. And I hardly even speak Italian anymore. And so it was like strange. It was strange to come back. But synchronicity carried me every step of the way so that I could do an amazing work. For 5 years, I brought this work to many, many cities in Italy, to many, many people. It was easy, it was wonderful, it was powerful, it was well received, it was very fulfilling. In one of those courses, somebody brought me, in 1992, somebody brought me a newspaper. And the middle part of the newspaper, it had this big spread which said, found a community in Piedmont who had carved a temple inside the mountain and who did it in secret for 16 years. And the whole article was filled about telling the story of this community with pictures of this temple. And this came to me during a break of this course. I read it and said, my goodness, I'd love to go see it. Well, it was 1992, and I was not able to see that until 2001.
Oh my!
9 years later. So in those years, of course, I taught in Italy, went back to Hawaii, lived in Hawaii, had my own website of consciousgrowth.com. Just did my things to engage with people in helping them to grow. And then some friends from Hawaii asked me if I could take them on a 2 weeks trip to Italy and tour them around. So I created this marvelous, gorgeous, wonderful tour for them, took them all over Italy, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time. And when they left to go to the airport, and I had decided to stay because my daughter was around, etc., I decided I'm going to go and see this community that I heard so much long ago. I'm going to go and see it. So I called up and booked 2 nights and took a train from Rome and went up to Ivrea, where somebody picked me up and took me to Damano. And as soon as I entered, I knew it was my home.
Oh.
And I didn't know why, because it wasn't that I particularly liked the environment. I didn't particularly care about what I was seeing. It wasn't the energy. It wasn't anything that was really attracting to me, but I knew this was home. So it was confusing because I lived in Hawaii and I enjoyed living there. And all of a sudden I was being called to be here back to Italy, which wasn't my greatest dream. In fact, in 33 years, I never thought once of coming, not once. So all of a sudden, I'm feeling called. So I think to myself, oh, well, okay, it's someday, maybe I will. And I go back to Hawaii. A month or so later, some friends from California call me and say, we are going to Damanhur in October. This was in June when I was my 2 days in Damanhur. We are going to Damanhur in October for a month. Would you like to come? We would like to pay for you the stay and the trip. Okay, well, I said, wasn't my plan to go. I already had gone there in June for 2 days already. But gosh, this is an offer I can't refuse. So I went to Damalur for a month of October with a small group of people, and I knew when I came that I'd been called so that I could come and decide to stay. During that month, which I don't know what we did in a month, because usually people come for a week, 2 weeks at the very most, a month, I don't know what we did. But it was clear to me I'd been called. And so I went back to Hawaii, packed my bags, and came back to live in Damalur by December 19th. So the month of November, I just packed my bags. And
So Damanhur is, as you mentioned, it's a community in Piedmont, northern Italy, an spiritual community. But I've heard, and it's often said, that it's a laboratory for the future of humankind, about researching consciousness. How's that been affecting you?
Yes. Damalur is a very interesting place. To discover Damalur, you have to be patient. It's like as you were peeling an onion, because there is always more to peel and more to come to the center. So it takes a while to enter into all the possibilities that Damalur have to offer. And yes, there is many groups in Damalur who do different types of research. So, for example, I'm in a group of dreamers, and we do a research on dreams using a variety of techniques and modalities and approaches, etc. But that's not the only group I'm in. I'm in another group that has to do with death, and we look into the death, the rituals for death, and the preparation for death, etc., etc. So there are many different ways in which people can explore their interest and expand their awareness about the things they're interested in. So it is a place that can be very stimulating, but it has some challenges, because it does require a total commitment, a total presence. It's like you have a social environment that you are engaged in and day out. You're living with people, and so you're learning through the reflection other people provide for you. You have a spiritual path that you follow, and that requires time and energy and attention from you. You have work that you have to do for the community, for yourself, to support yourself. In any case, Damalur is a great opportunity for growth and a great challenge. It's not an easy choice.
I think through the challenges, that's often how we learn, though, right? It's
absolutely.
And I noticed
instant choice.
And I noticed the research. It's not about just going across the top and looking at a whole bunch of different things. It's about choosing something and going, like you said, dream. It's practical dreaming. You really do a lot of work there.
Yes, we have courses on dreams that we explore and experience. We experiment quite a bit. We experiment with sound. We experiment with certain modalities. Too long to say, but so we come up with experiments to see what works, what doesn't. We have different patterns that we trace. We have different, it's very interesting, very interesting.
So it's not just the abstract or the esoteric, it's a science that you're really researching and studying in dreams. Or I've heard spirals or different topics that you can...
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful. So in this journey then, from starting the orphanage and through your travels and studies in the States and that freedom you had, and then coming back to Damanhur, you've come up now with a passion of what you want to teach now and who you are. This whole self-awareness to self-realization and love. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. So for many, many years, I've been teaching Damanhur courses because speaking two languages, I'm able to do courses in English. And so it's wonderful for Damanhur to reach out into the world and propose and do the courses, offer the courses that they have to offer. But lately, after COVID, I had to reinvent myself, having stopped traveling at all. And all of a sudden, this great creativity started emerging, that all of the knowledge that I was given, that wasn't necessarily the Damanurian knowledge that I'd been for 20 years passing on to others, but all the knowledge that came from before, from Lazarus most of all, but also from others. It came very strong to me that I had to pass on that one too. Although Lazarus is still alive and still doing his wonderful sessions and workshops, I had to give what touched me. Because of all the 8 years I was with him, there were two topics that were the most profound for me. One was the understanding of the 7 steps from self-awareness to self-realization. And that to me is profound material. The love material was also to me like, thank you God for that, because it opened up amazing awareness and amazing opportunity for me to really be able to help others in this path by having people understand how distorted our understanding of love often is. And another thing that I loved sharing was the co-creation of our reality. And so doing these courses, co-creations, conscious co-creation, self-realization, self-awareness to self-realization, and then to take the love that is one part of the course of the 7 steps and going very deep and create the course that I'm going to offer in mid-October, which is a 3-segment love course where we go deep into what love really is and the importance of receiving love if you want to have a reality that is smooth and easy and wonderful. And then an element that is not very well known and it's hardly understandable. It's a little bit strange for people to hear, which Lazarus calls being loved. And it talks about how you can be transformed and changed by the love that you give and the love that you receive. And so this deep delving into the understanding of love, it's giving me great satisfaction. I can't wait to offer this material, and because it really speaks to me. It's a passion, it's a mission for me, this thing about love. And there's nothing more profound and fulfilling that for me to share the love information and material with people, so that to free them to love, so that they can love.
Let's dig into that just a little bit, because we hear love and that's such a abstract word, and you're, I mean, everything I'm hearing from you is about being practical, the research and going deeper, and it seems there's something for us to understand about love.
There is much to understand about love, and mainly is that we are repeating in our life the love concept and convictions that we were passed on by family, by education, by religion, by society, that we have taken for granted those concepts about love, and they are distortions. And we sometimes for us, love is guilt. Love is pleasing others to the level of depletion completely. Love is sacrificing yourself. Love, there are distortions that don't make us happy and don't make happy the people we want to love. And so it is important for us to understand what love really is, so that we can love and have that joy of giving love and of receiving love from others.
And so you make this very practical and real when you do these courses to understand.
Because we also go into what stops us from love. Because love is becoming sometimes a cliche word. And it becomes very abstract. And very often we have a lot of resistance to love, because for us, maybe in childhood, love was pain, love was obedience, love was sacrificing. And so we have resistance to love. And we need to uncover, discover, and heal all of those limitations that block us from true love.
Beautiful. The one other thing I'd like to touch on in our last minutes here is you also do divination, and you teach a course on divination.
Oh, yes. Yes. In Daman, well, I was doing cards when I was in California in Hawaii. I was using the Crowley deck. But when I came to Daman, they didn't use that deck at all. They used a deck I couldn't feel much affinity for. And then I woke up one day as a dreamer, knowing that I had to create my own deck. And I created Braltale, which means magical signs for divination. It's a deck of 111 cards that have the symbols of the sacred language that we use in Damanur to connect with the divine. And it's a beautiful language, the beautiful symbols. And I made a deck of beautiful cards with the paintings of the founder, Roberta Falco, which was a wonderful painter. And so I use this divination deck a lot. I have a lot of people that come to ask for readings. And these cards are awesome. They are uncanny in giving correct information, powerful guidance. And so it is a total thrill and delight for me to share Braltale with people.
When did you start realizing that you could understand or receive divinations and understand these messages?
It was as if a memory from past lives was always there for me. There was this attraction to divine, I wanted to learn how to see further in the future. And I studied with Angelis Alien, this wonderful teacher that wrote the Tarot Handbook, and started using the Crowley deck that she used, and started with that. But then, when the need came that I wanted to do it, but I didn't have a way to do it because in Damanur it was impossible to do one or the other, because I didn't like one and the other was people didn't relate to. I had to create my own. That was super wonderful.
I'm thinking about a divination course you taught years ago in mystery school, the one where divination isn't just the cards, but you can create anything as a divination.
Yes.
But how did you start receiving those kinds of messages or trusting what you were seeing?
Because it was so obvious. It became so obvious that when I surrendered, when I trusted, and I asked for, I would get the answer. It was obvious. It wasn't an effort at all. And so it became fun. It became just a wonderful interaction with reality. And it was a dialogue, a conversation, if you will, with reality that was happening, and that I wanted to then make even more tangible through the use of the cards. So for people to see that it wasn't just me putting out things from the ether, but that the cards were validating what a person felt, what a person thought, what a person was choosing. So it was.
I think it's interesting when you create a language to work with that information coming to you, like you reinforce that language through the cards of how they're being used. It becomes that conversation, like you said, and not just the bird's going that way, now it means this.
Yes. For us in the Western world, the cards are a tool that we accept and that we can use and we can understand. And we all could have the facility to use them. I sell the decks, and people find it not incredibly easy to use because people don't have immediate trust in themselves that they can use it. But the cards are actually easy to use. They're talking very simply and very clearly to anyone who is willing to trust the message.
That's what I was going to ask you next, is if anybody could learn how to do this divination, you think, and be successful at.
Everybody can. Everybody can. You just have to get away from yourself. You have to get out of your ego and just know that the cards are using you to just read. You're just someone who's reading like a book. And the unconscious of the person is telling that person what that person already knows and what it needs to be reminded of. You have to get out of the way and just read what's there. In total trust and in total no attachment, being right.
That's the tough thing.
Nothing to do with you.
Okay. Because I've looked at, I used to read cards. I had an Osha deck and more divination, not tarot. And it was really tapping into my intuition and reading from there, not from what the cards were saying. When I do your deck, it's more about what the cards are saying and less my filter.
Yes, yes. Your intuition is there as well to tie things together in a harmonious way. But the cards are telling you exactly what the person needs to hear without too much added. So that the least we say and add on, the more the cards can just provide the answer to the person. And you get out of the way.
I would, if anybody's intrigued in what we're talking about with this divination, I would encourage you to reach out to Shama. She has a website, shamaviola.com, and she offers one-on-one sessions with her divination, and it's a great way to answer questions. I've been using her quite a bit lately. But it's also, I find, very interesting to her cards are very different, and taking the class has been wonderful for me to learn how to use them. So.
I love those cards. Yeah. And I don't feel that they're mine. I feel that they were meant to come and they just use me to come through. And but they need to reach people. And so it's so wonderful to feel as an instrument of the universe, doing what I'm meant to do without being so concerned that it would be me that is recognized or that is acknowledged, or like that is really the work of spirituality, to get out of your way a lot and to release and let go that more egoic tendency to be seen, recognized, and loved, which comes from our human nature and is fine, is there, but it tends to bring us disappointment a lot. And when we instead rely upon the love within, the love without, then the fear leaves and safety and security is there, and we can trust.
Thank you, Shama. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you would like to learn more, again, her website is www.shamaviola.com. And of course, if you'd like to have some adventures, we didn't do an experience this time in meditation, but you can go to my website at jenniferevanko.com, and there's a free series of adventures through time called Countdown to a New Beginning. So I hope you come back and join us next time in 2 weeks. And thank you for joining us. Namaste. Thank you.